Welcome to some of the most frequently asked numeracy calculator topics. Okay, question one. Right, question one is basically about three airlines, and your job is to claim that each one is the best. Now, if we look at free flight first, free flight is the best because it has the least number of complaints. Where's the complaints? Here it is, free flight, 0.62, lower than the other two in that row. Okay, next one, best to fly. Best to fly is this column here. It has the lowest number of lost suitcases, so this 0.24 is lower than each of those. And then the very last one, GoJet. GoJet is this column here, and you can see that 92% of the flights are on time, so you can claim that that one is the best as well. I would imagine the marking scheme goes something like, for two claims which are correct, you get 1 mark, and then for all three claims which are correct, you get the 2 marks. Okay, on to part B. Now I've zoomed out a little bit just to show you that if you look at best to fly, 88% of the flights are on time, which therefore means 12% is late. So I'm going to zoom back in on this bit. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the numeracy calculator topics, some of the most frequently asked questions in exams. Okay, let's go to the first one. The first one is essentially 3 different airlines, and you are trying to claim that each of the airlines are the best. So let me zoom in a little bit. So let's do one at a time. Free flights. If you were to claim that free flight was the best one, then I can see that it has the least number of complaints. So the complaints are the ones in the middle. 0.62 is essentially smaller than these ones. On to best to fly. Best to fly apparently is the lowest number of suitcases lost. So 0.24 cases per 1,000 are lost. So that's a suitable claim. And then on to the very last one. The very last one is GoJet. GoJet being the highest percentage that are on time. That's 92% compared with the other two there. Okay, on to question 2. You pay £500 for a computer and you make a 35% loss. So if you make a 35% loss, you still have 65% left. That's where the 0.65 comes from. Or you can do it a different way, and you can work out the 35% first and take it off what you started with. Either way, you need the 325. So if you've got £325, you get the 2 marks automatically. Otherwise, you'd get a 1 mark for realising that you've got 65% left, or you could have the 1 mark for working that one out either. So one for the method, and then the final one for the £325. Okay, on to part B. Now part B, I'm sure you realise that how much you've lost is £300 by doing that calculation. However, it wants a percentage loss. So you have to divide it by the original and times by 100, otherwise known as doing 300 over 500 times by 100, because it's a percentage, and it gets you the 60%. So you probably get 1 mark for realising it's the 300 and the final mark for the 60%. Okay, number 3, exchange rates question. So for an exchange rates question, I always think of going on holidays, it's multiplying, and coming back from holidays, it's dividing. So the first one is going on holidays. So it's a multiplication question. You get 1 mark for the reason it's multiply, and the other mark for the $1,824. Part B, well, for part B, you first of all need to know how much he's got left, because they spend that much money out of the $1,824 from the one above. So you've got $175 left, 1 mark, and then when you come back from holidays, it's a dividing question. So £115, 13 pence gives you the final mark. Okay, question 4, another exchange rates question. So the important stuff is that Ewan has £450 and he changes it into rupees. That's the exchange rate. When you're going on holidays, it's a multiplication question. Again, 1 mark for the multiplying, 1 mark for the answer. Okay, part B. So on part B, this is one of the strange exchange rate questions where they only have a certain amount of notes when you go to change the money. So they give you a different exchange rate. They say that the bureau only has 500 rupee notes, and they want to know how many can you buy for your £450. So again, it's a case of it's a case of when you go on holidays. So the first job is to work out how many rupee notes you would normally have bought. So that's the answer to the part A question, if I just scroll back down. So you've got that 44,730, but you can't buy all of that. You can only buy 44,500 because of the 500 rupee notes that they have. So you want to know how much does that cost in British money. So in British money, it's kind of like thinking of it as coming back from your holiday. So it's a dividing question. And in British money, it's £446.25. Now that's 4 marks for all of that. You probably get 1 mark for realizing that that's the amount of rupees that you can buy. Another mark for recognizing the new exchange rate with a divide, and the final mark for the £446.25. On question 5, it's an estimating the mean question. There's a lot of stuff going on in this question. Right, one of the most important things is that they give it to you in bold, an estimate of the mean, and they tell you for the 30 days, the answer is 27 centimeters. Now, this is not a run-of-the-mill question because you're essentially asked to find the missing gaps. So, first of all, what I've done is I've worked out the middle point for each of these categories. So the middle point of that is 5. If you're not sure, with your calculator, you do 9, add 1, press equals, divide by 2, and it gives you the 5. And because all of the days are 30, if I were to circle that again, 30 days, all of these here should add up to 30, which means that the 2 missing ones must be 16, because these first 3 is 14 so far. If you were to write out an estimate of the mean in the long format, what you would be doing is you'd have this 5 times 2, then you do 14 times 8, then 23 times 4, and then 32 times this missing one, 39 times the missing one, and then you'd press equals, you divide by 30 because there are 30 days in the question, and then they tell us that the answer is 27. And we know that these 2 missing boxes, or the question marks, have to add up to 16. So unfortunately, there's no fast way of doing this. You have to keep trying different guesses so that they add up to 16. Now, rather than bore you to death, you could have tried a 2 and a 14, a 3 and a 13, a 4 and a 12. As long as your guesses keep adding up to 16, you can see which one gets you to 27. So I've cheated a little bit, and I've basically said, if you put a 4 there and a 12 there, you get the answer, which is 27. But this would take you about 2 to 3 minutes worth of work with you trying different guesses. So it's a 4-mark question. You'd probably get 1 mark for realizing that the 2 missing ones have to add up to 16. You'd get a mark for writing something similar to this estimate of the mean calculation. You'd get a further mark if you tried any two numbers that added up to 16. And then you get the fourth mark for having 4 and 12 as the correct answer. So the bit I did miss out is this mark here where I didn't try another guess before I settled on the 4 and the 12. So your answers would look like that bit at the bottom. Okay, on to question 6. The important thing about question 6 is that you've got this £3,500, 2 years, 1.5%. So the most difficult bit here is to realise that 1.5% is written like this. If you imagine 1%, it would be 1.01. So 1.5% is this way, that's 2 years, and that's the amount of money that you put in. It's a 4-mark question. It does say to the nearest penny, so make sure your roundings are correct. You probably have 1 mark for the percentage, 1 mark for the number of years, 1 mark for realising that it's a multiply with the 3,500, and of course 1 mark for the final answer. Right, I think 7 part B is a really strange question. It's like asking the same thing 3 times. So the most important thing for us again is this £3,000 at 1.25% interest, and they need you to work out the compound interest earned after 5 years, 15 and 25. So exactly the same way as before. I won't go through it again. It's a 3-mark question, so I can't see how you're going to get anything other than 1 mark per correct answer. Now it does say to the nearest penny, as with all pounds and pence, so if you've rounded incorrectly, it's very likely you're going to lose that mark. If you hadn't realised already, question 8 is a trigonometry question. The interesting part is the angle of elevation, so that's the angle when you look up, and it's 51 degrees. And then the height is 40, which gives us the picture there. Label your triangle with the opposite, the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Cross out the one that you've got nothing next to. So you should know that it's a tan question. Depending on who your teacher is, they might tell you to remember this word Sokotoa, but we won't go into that too much. Cut a long story short, I think everybody would know that it's tan. So tan 51 equals 40 over x. I don't want to explain it too much because I know that Mr. Clayton and we have different methods. And you end up with 40 divided by tan 51, and then the final answer is 32.4 meters. It's a 4-mark question. I guess you'll get 1 mark for realising it's a tan, 1 mark possibly for recognising that 51 is there. You'll get a 1 mark for the 32.4 meters, and then if you look at my picture above, the 32.4 is all of that side, and you're asked to find this little bit here. So that's where the 32.4 take off the 20 comes from. So that would probably be your last mark. For question 9, I was always told that if you had a right angle triangle with 2 sides and you have to find the 3rd side, then it's going to be a Pythagoras. So Pythagoras involves writing the biggest number first, squaring it, then the second number, squaring it. Add them both together because you're finding the longest side. Take the square root, and the answer is 11 kilometers. So the 11 kilometers was the Pythagoras. You found this distance x here. It doesn't actually say find the hypotenuse or find the largest distance. It says find the total distance. So the total distance means perimeter by any other word, so you have to add them all up. 4-mark question. You probably get 1 for doing the squaring, 1 for doing a square root, 1 for the 11 kilometers, and 1 for the final answer for the total distance. So for number 10, it is a bearing question. It involves bearings, but it's got a triangle. So you should know that it's either going to be Pythagoras or trigonometry. In other words, that SOHCAHTOA bit. Let's see what we've got. All the information in the question is in the picture. So that's very important. That's important too. And it asks us, what bearing does the ship need to sail back to Port P? So the bearing is the angle that I'm pointing to there. However, when you do trigonometry, you're going to end up finding the angle X. So that's just something to be careful of. Again, lots of different ways to remember why it's tan. But it's always shift on your calculator, shift tan. If you find an angle, you have to press the shift button. There's no other way in the world to do it. So this will give us the angle 60.6 degrees. Let me just move that up a little bit. But you've just found out this angle there. So the connection is that it's 90 degrees. Take off the angle that you've just found. So the bit on the right hand side does just that for you. And it's 29.4 degrees. But as a bearing, it should really be a 3-digit number. So it's a 4-mark question. You probably get 1 for doing the tan, 1 for knowing what the division is, 1 for finding the angle in the triangle, and then the final 1 for the bearing. In the mark scheme, it accepts either of these, but just bear in mind that bearings are 3-digit numbers. Okay, number 11 is, it's just a pi r squared question. Oh, I beg your pardon. Oh, yes, it is. I forgot. Sorry. I seen the word diameter and I thought it was circumference. So, surface area. Calculate the surface area. So you should know it's area equals pi r squared. And the radius is half of the diameter. You can see here in the question, they give you diameter as 12. So it's your job to find the radius as being 6. So interesting enough, you can take pi as 3.14 on your calculator, or you can press the pi button. Both are accepted and both get you full marks. So if you do have something slightly different from this in terms of the numbers after the decimal point, it's probably because you used pi on your calculator, and both are acceptable. 2 marks. You'll get 1 mark for putting in some numbers, and then 1 mark for realizing how to do it on the calculator. Question 12 is a volume of a cylinder question. So you're given that the diameter is 46 and the height is 125. So that's exactly what I've drawn in the picture. And they do ask for your answer in litres. So I'm hoping that you know that to work out the volume of a cylinder, it's the area of the circle at the top times by the height. So that's what this picture, or this calculation is doing here. There's the area, and volume is area times height because it's a prism. So you get this in centimeters cubed, but they do ask for it in litres. So there's 1,000 centimeters cubed in 1 litre. So divide your answer by 1,000, which will give you this bit here. 3 marks for the question. I'd imagine it's 1 for the area, 1 for the volume, 1 for realising that you have to divide by 1,000, and 1 for that 207 litres. Again, if you've used the pi button on your calculator, you might have a slightly different number, but it's perfectly correct. Okay, on to part B. Part B, important stuff again. They told us that there's 150 litres in 1 drum. We've got 4,500 drums, and you sell it for £1.2 million. Please tell us 1 litre. So the total oil sold 150 litres in 4,500 drums, gives you this one. And if it cost 1.2 million, you do need to recognise that this is the same as 1.2 million. Remember, a million would have 6 digits here. So 1.2 million looks like that. And you divide it by the total oil sold, it gives you £1.78 per litre. So there's 3 marks. I would imagine you get 1 mark for that, 1 mark for doing the division with the correct 1.2 million expression, and then 1 for the final answer. For part C, I thought the best way to do it was with a picture. So you're told that one barrel has 159 litres and it produces 1700 kilowatt hours. So here it is over here. There's the 1700 kilowatt hours, and they want you to find out how much litres produces 1000 kilowatt hours. So I'm sure I can convince you that going from there to there is times by 1.7. So when you want to do the same from to find out the litres of oil, it's times it by 1.7 again, but think about the reverse process would be dividing by 1.7. So the calculation is 159 divided by 1.7 gives you this 93.5, but they do ask for it as a percentage of a barrel of oil. So the 93.5 litres for the 1000 goes in a calculation like this, and then times by 100 to give you the percentage. 3-mark question. I would imagine you get 1 for having that 1.7, 1 for the 93.5, and 1 for doing this calculation with the final answer. Okay, number 13, another volume of a cylinder question. This one's fairly tricky. I've drawn a picture for you again. Remember realizing that 9 litres is the same as the 9,000. So that's where that little bit comes from. And a volume of a cylinder would be area times height. Height is the thing that we don't know. And the area of the circle at the top, you can work out by doing pi times r squared. So that's where all of this comes from. And then once you've worked that a little bit out, you get to this calculation, and I'm sure I can convince you to divide both sides by 452.2 to get the final answer 19.9. So it's a 4-mark question. I would guess that you would have 1 mark for working out the area of the circle, 1 mark for somehow having the volume of a prism is area times the height, so the volume of a cylinder in this case. 1 mark for getting to that stage, and 1 mark for the final answer. Number 14, awful question. Really hate this one. So 3 meters is the same as 300. That's an easy start. But the rest of the stuff you have to do a lot of work for. So let's see how I get the things in the box. So of a prism, volume equals area times length. Make sure the length is the 300 centimeters. And I'm guessing that it's not too difficult to work out that the area must be 18, because 18 times 300 gives you the 5400. Yep, I did make a mistake. I put too many notes on, so I did have to go through and correct my calculations. So the area, the front bit, is basically a triangle. So I'll just move that. So base times height, half your answer, and that's supposed to be 18. So think of it as an equation. How do you get rid of this 2? Well, you times both sides by 2 to get this line. How do you get rid of the 9.6? Well, divide both sides by 9.6 and you get height as 3.75. So that was the worst part. And then if I redraw you the front piece of the triangle, hopefully now you recognize it's a Pythagoras question where you square both sides, add it together because you're finding the longest side. Don't forget to take a square root and you get the 10.3. 7-mark question. Wow, massive. 7 marks. I would imagine you obviously get 1 for that 300 there. You would get 1 for realizing that that equation. Another 1 for working out 18. That's 3 marks. Area of a triangle. Putting the numbers in the area of a triangle is 4 marks. Working out the height here is the 5th mark. Pythagoras' theorem, squaring the numbers and adding, is the 6th mark, and then the final answer is 10.3, the 7th mark. Okay, on to question 15. When I first saw this, I thought it was an awful question, but it's much more straightforward. Before you even read the question, you're probably guessing it's to do with area if you're painting a wall. And it says, show in all calculations, find the least amount she has to pay for the paint. Okay, so the area of the wall to start with is just length times width to get 70. Then you got to work out how much paint you would need for those 70 meters squared. It does say here that 1 litre covers 6 meters squared. So if you divide by 6, you'll find out how many litres of paint you need. So it's 11.6 litres. And to buy that paint, you can either use 5 litre tins or you can use 2 litre tins. So we need 2 5 litres, 1 2 litre, and then if you do the calculations, you get £30. 6 mark question. 1 mark for the 70 meters squared, 1 mark for doing the divide, 1 mark for getting 11.6 litres. That's 3. Probably 1 mark for working out the cost of each, or working out the combination of tins for, and then a double mark for the end one as £30. Okay, on to question 16. A lot going on here. Basically, if you live on your own, you get 25% off that £1,200. Or in other words, Alan would still have to pay the 75%. So 75% of £1,200 is £900. Or if his mate shares with him, they obviously pay half each. So that's £600. So he would save £300 if he shared with his mate. Now, percentage change is the saving or the change divided by the original times 100. So if you do 300 divided by 900 times 100, you get the 33.3%. 4 mark question. You probably get 1 mark for working that out, 1 mark for saying he saves £300, 1 mark for putting some numbers into this formula, and the 4th mark for the 33.3%. 17 is a similar shapes question. So they give us the height of a sign, or the height and the width of the sign, and they want to make a badge, and the badge is 2.4 meters in height. So I've drawn a new picture here. Now the first thing to realize is all the units are messed up. You've got meters and centimeters. So I've changed this 4 meters into 400 centimeters. And I've changed the 6.2 meters into 620 centimeters. And to go from the small badge to the big sign, you times them by 166.6. You're probably thinking, how did I work that out? Well, it's divide the large by the small, and it gives you this number here. So to go back from the big picture to the small picture, you're doing the opposite of the times in, which is dividing. And you'd get the 3.7 centimeters. So the 3 mark question, you'd get 1 mark for realizing this 166.6, 1 mark for doing the divide, and 1 mark for the final answer. Okay, 17 part B. Always have a look at how many marks it's worth. 1 mark. And it just says, is Leo correct? Give a reason. So the old badge has no rotational symmetry. You'd have to turn it all the way around at 360 degrees before it looked like itself again. The badge above has got reflection symmetry, or a line of symmetry. That's where that line comes from. So was he right? Was he wrong? He was incorrect, because the new badge does have symmetry. It says here that he had no symmetry, but he's fibbing because it had the reflective symmetry, or line of reflection. Question 18, a question on upper and lower bounds. So the first question says, what is the greatest possible length of the wall? So if the wall is 600 measured to the nearest 10, think of half in this 10, and then you add it on to find the maximum, or take it off to find the minimum. So we're obviously adding it on to get the 605. Similarly, the least length of the wardrobe. So the wardrobe's 250 to the nearest 1. So take half of that 1 to make 0.5, and you do 250, take off 0.5, gives you the 249.5. Part C, 5-mark question. I've drawn you a picture. So to be certain that this desk is going to fit, you're going to take the smallest the wall could be, the largest wardrobe, and the largest bookcase, and then let's see if the gap is enough. So smallest wall, 595. Largest a wardrobe could be is 250.5 centimeters. The largest the bookcase could be is 147.5 centimeters. So if we worked out the gap, it'd be 197 centimeters. But does the desk fit in there? And the desk is 2,000 millimeters, and it says exactly that. So 2,000 millimeters is the same as 200 centimeters. So it will not always fit. Sometimes it could do if you had like a maximum wall length, but you can't always be sure it's going to fit. 5 marks for all of that right in. You probably get 1 mark for realizing that you have to use the minimum wall with the maximum wardrobe and bookcase, 1 for the gap, and then 1 for the conclusion with a reason. Okay, number 19, almost there. So in the question it says diameter is a multiple of 9, or multiple of 0.9. So what that really means is the diameter could be 0.9, 1.8, 2.7, 3.6. So you're just going up in 0.9s. You can just carry on adding 0.9s with your calculator. And they basically want to know what the circumference could be if the diameter is one of those. Now you can't go past the 10 meters of edging strip that she's bought. So you have to start by guessing 1. I've guessed 2.7, no particular reason. I thought, well, there was a reason. I thought it was around about 3, and pi is around about 3, so 3 times 3 is 9, so maybe that is the most it could be. So I did the circumference is pi times the diameter, and I got that, but I wasn't sure if I could go up to the next diameter and see if that would go over 10 meters. It does go over 10 meters, so I know it's too big. So this is the one that I need, and you've got 10 meters of edging strip. So when you take the one from the other, you'd get 1.52 meters. Now again, if you've used pi on your calculator, your answer might be a different decimal here, but either is fine, whether you're using 3.14 or pi on your calculator. So there's 4 marks. You'd probably get 1 mark for realizing the multiples. I'm guessing that you would get 1 mark for trying any of those diameters, which could be that one. 1 mark for settling on 2.7 meters. So maybe I should write here, diameter must be 2.7 meters. So you get a mark for that. 1, 2, 3 for the multiples, and the 4th for the edging strip left over. Okay, last question. So you're given how much money she earns, and there are 3 different types of tax. No tax on the first 3,500. Then there's 25% in between those 2 amounts, and anything above 10,500 euros is 35%. So I've drawn you a picture of what it looks like. So there's the 0% tax for the first bit. The money that she earns in between these 2 amounts, there's 7,000 euros, so that's 25% tax. And then over 10,500, look at what she earns there. So that's where the £24,000 comes from. It's that, subtract this one, and that's at 35%. So obviously I don't have to work out anything here because there's no tax. So this is 25% of the 7,000. This is the 35% of the 24,000. And you get these 2 amounts and then add them together to get your final tax. 6 marks. 6 marks, that's a lot. So you probably get 1 mark for working out the 7,000.
1 mark for working out this 24,000. You probably get another mark for each of those, and possibly a double mark for the final amount of the tax paid. So I should have written that by there as well. You get full marks no matter where you write it.